In today's episode, you will discover what happens when love finally meets self respect.
Hey, this is Steph, and welcome to the Together Moving Forward podcast.
Podcast helping 2S LGBTQI plus people embrace self love and self respect so you can celebrate yourself with pride.
Season 3.
By the end of this episode, you'll walk away with the courage to speak your truth, even when it feels uncomfortable, tools to rebuild self respect and confidence after silence or fear, the inspiration to believe that love, family, and happiness are truly possible for everyone. Today's conversation is about finding your voice with a proud queer mom, Sam Leeson. Hello again, I'm Steph Vachon, and I'm a human being. Welcome back to the Together Moving Forward podcast. Embrace your 2S LGBTQIA plus identity with pride through self-love. If you ever struggle to fully love and respect yourself, you're not alone, and this podcast is here to help. As someone who has navigated my own journey of self acceptance as a queer, I know the power of hearing voices that reflect our own experiences. In this podcast, you'll hear real stories and conversations that leave you with practical tools, fresh perspectives, and the confidence to embrace who you are with pride. To start, I need to say that I'm not a psychologist, a specialist, or someone with a college degree. I'm just a regular guy here to share with all of you and support each other. I won't tell anyone what to do or how to do things. Instead, I'll share my journey and we will all share journeys together. We'll learn from each other how to move forward. Today, I'm so grateful to welcome Sam Leeson, a family wellness specialist, podcast host, and proud queer mom who turned her personal journey into a mission to empower 2S LGBTQIA plus families to live and love authentically. Without any more waiting, let's go meet her right now. So, Sam, thank you so much for being here with us today and welcome to the Together Moving Forward podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing me here.
You've shared that for years you felt your voice wasn't powerful enough to matter. What helped you reclaim your voice and start living your truth with confidence?
What helped me reclaim my truth really was the panic attack I had after I dropped my kids off for school for their first day of school. So, very briefly, in a nutshell, I worked evenings and weekends. And so I homeschooled my kids so that I had time with them every day. And when they were about to go into grades 6 and 3, respectively, they said to me that they wanted to try going to school. And so I found a local Waldorf school because I thought that would be a great transitional school for them. Got them set up, dropped them off on their first day of school. They were so excited to go. And as I was leaving, after having dropped them off, I had a full blown panic attack. And I realized that my eldest was the same age I was the first time I was assaulted. And I was assaulted on a regular basis in the small private school that I went to until grade 9, until I left that school. I think that that's part of the root of it. It wasn't even a conscious realization, but it was just me starting to understand that a lot of things had happened in my life that I felt like I had no control over. I
Mhm.
knew I was queer. I dated girls on the side when I was in high school and just didn't tell any family or friends or anybody who could out me because it wasn't the thing to do in the early 80s.
Mhm.
And and so I kind of just lived my lie until I had that panic attack. And that was the start of me realizing I needed to make some changes. I needed to listen to the voice inside my body that told me that it was okay for me to be who I was, and that those who loved and supported me would love and support me, and those who didn't need to be a part of my life. And that's really, it sounds like an odd thing, that panic attacks, but maybe you start to change your life. But it was knowing I couldn't feel like that every day was really what made me start changing. Yeah.
Leaving your first marriage was both an act of courage and self preservation. What message do you have for listeners who feel stuck in unsafe and unfulfilling situations?
The first thing I would say is breathe.
Mhm.
Because when we get stressed out, when we get scared, when we feel overwhelmed, we hold our breath and then we can't do anything to move ourselves forward. So, as I say to my clients and my kids and everyone else around me, first breathe and then just take it in steps. I want people to hear me when I say that you do deserve to be happy and safe. And when you know that that's not what's happening for you, then evaluate your life, your role in the situation, how you can manifest change for yourself and visualize that. And then set small daily goals to help you get closer and closer to that. But it takes time. For me, part of my challenge was that I was living in an unsafe space with an ex partner that was unsafe for me. And ironically, I volunteered with the sexual assault center and everything else. I knew how to help other people get out of circumstances like my own, but I couldn't get myself out of my own experience. Everybody will always say, well, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they leave? If it was that easy, then people would do it all the time. But it's not
Mhm.
that easy. It's walking away from the life that you know, from all of your security. Sometimes the devil you know is easier to navigate than the devil you don't. And so I would say, believe that you can do it and take very small steps, even if it needs to be one tiny step every 3 weeks for the
Mhm.
first while until you kind of get your bearings. But visualize what you want and then slowly set the path in place to make that happen. And you'll get there. You'll get there. Create a support network for yourself with people you truly feel safe with as well, because that's hard. It's so hard to know who you can be safe with. And that's whether you're coming out of an abusive situation, whether you're coming out of the proverbial closet. We all think we have an idea of how people will respond,
Mhm.
but I mean, I'm a woman of a certain age. I heard all kinds of jokes and comments and disparaging statements made about the queer community. Where on earth was I going to find someone who would really truly make me feel safe to
Mhm.
tell them this is my lived experience? I'm not sure how to move forward,
I
right?
think just like you said, one small step at a time. And I can relate to what you're saying about how it's much harder to coach ourselves. I mean, I've been a figures getting coached almost my whole life, and so I was such a good coach on getting back my students into believing they could do it.
Right.
Learning to do that to yourself is also quite the challenge, but once you start one little step at a time, it makes sense and it gets much easier as you
It
go.
does. It does. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Mhm.
You now dedicate your work to helping 2S LGBTQI plus people create families of their own. What inspired you to turn your personal journey into a mission to empower others?
Hmm. When my eldest, well, even before my eldest was born, I was a women's studies student in university. As I said, I worked for the Sexual Assault Center in a volunteer capacity. I was absolutely unequivocally all for supporting women, making sure that women had voices to feel safe and secure and heard. And then I was pregnant with my eldest child. I didn't feel like I had a voice. I went to my appointments. I did what was told of me. When I asked questions, my questions were often dismissed. But I was so excited to be expecting a baby and bringing another human into the world that I didn't really allow myself to question the quote unquote authority that was making decisions on my behalf. And so my birth wasn't the birth that I wanted it to be. And after my eldest was born, and I just say all of this, he's 27 now. So there's been a few years since
Yeah.
all of that happened. But after he was born, I realized what the word doula was and decided that I wanted to take that role on because I didn't want anyone else to have the kind of birth experience that I had, where they just didn't feel like their voice mattered. And I got heavily involved in working in that capacity. I continued my schooling. I went back to college to do some more adult education classes and things like that. And I grew baby ready from the ground up. And a friend of mine, I want to say maybe 2 years after I came out and started living authentically, I'd been in the industry for a long 10 years at that point. And she said to me, she's a midwife, and she said, "Are you doing work exclusively with the queer community?" And I said, "No. I mean, everyone's welcome in my classes." I mean, a side note, a rather ironic side note, is I met my now wife in one of my prenatal classes when we were both with other people and just formed a friendship that has manifested now into a relationship that's we've been together almost 16 years. Um, but yeah, I couldn't. It didn't dawn on me that queer people deserved to have a space that was theirs.
Yeah.
That when they went to a prenatal class, they weren't the other. That everybody was part of that. And if there was a cishet couple in the class, they were the others, not the queer folks in the class. And so, that verbal slap upside the head was, I guess, what I needed to realize that the work that I dedicated my life to beyond parenting my children was really something that I needed to give to my own community.
Mhm.
And there are amazing doulas all across the board everywhere, but most of the that I know anyway aren't part of the queer community. And it is just such a relief to walk into a space and know that the person who is supporting you or is your care provider or who is your educator happens to also just understand that small piece of you, that you don't have to out yourself over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it sort of morphed from there. While I was doing a lot of birth and childbirth education, that had evolved into parenting coaching for the clients I'd worked with up to that point. They had their babies with me. Now they wanted more support as they were raising their babies, just to have an extra voice to speak to and to listen and offer suggestions and perspectives. Now I was talking to people who hadn't got there yet. And I was thinking, as queer people, when we're little, before we even come out to ourselves, we are told and we're conditioned from a very young age that we're going to be parents, right? So you'll know someday when you have a child of your own, and so in our heads, for many of us, it's just this picture that's in there that we just think, okay, well, someday I guess we'll be a parent. And then you come out to yourself, even before you come out to anyone else on the planet, you come out to yourself, and there's some understanding that straightforward picture that you had in your mind isn't going to be as straightforward and easy as you thought it was going to be. And now you have to revisit that. How's that going to happen? How much is that going to cost? And I'm going to say, I'll be perfectly frank, it's easier for the most part, and I use air quotes around the word easier, for those who actually have a uterus, because we have somewhere to grow a child of our own. If we compared to those who don't have a uterus, who then have to be at the mercy of someone who does and who's willing to share that. It's not an easy path. People don't know where to look. They don't know where to even start to look to ask the questions that they can ask.
Yeah.
And so that's really how things have evolved, really into being a family wellness specialist, starting with fertility or making connections with surrogacy agencies or adoption organizations, the Children's Aid Society for fostering, right through into I work with families now until their kids are teenagers. It's amazing. It's fantastic, but it's really been a beautiful morphing of the whole journey.
Well, I have to congratulate you because I think it's so important to be able to go to a safe space where there's people like us that want to have children. And we had the same thing here in Quebec. It was the LGBTQ Family Coalition. And That's when me and my husband went. We wanted to go through the process, but we had so many questions. And just going into a room full of queer people and the queer people talking to us and telling us about their experiences and meeting the kids, and all of that was just, it was magical. It just helped us so much. So great work you're doing. Thank you so
It's
much.
empowering. It's empowering, right? To spend time with peers who have been
Totally.
there and done that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because and even today, around my straight friends, who will tell us, you should be doing that, you should be doing that, or how that's what I would hear, before we had our child. And a lot of things are so different. We have to deal with society so differently. So to go there for us was really helping us to find our own voice, our own strategy, what we wanted to be, what we wanted to do with having our son. So, yeah, wonderful, wonderful work. Thank you so much for being there.
Oh, it's an honor, truly. I consider the work that I do an honor to be invited to do. It's really cool.
You've said that at 53, self love means listening to your heart and living without shame. What does that look like in your everyday life now?
For me, it's living unapologetically out and proud, not letting myself shy away from talking about the topics that are difficult for other people to hear, letting myself vet who I spend time with to be people that make me feel as good about myself as I hope that I make them feel about themselves, because it's too easy to spend time in the company of people who don't offer me the respect that I deserve for just being who I am.
Yeah.
And calling people out when they're being when they're being even one of the things that drives me crazy is when I hear somebody say, "Oh, that's so gay." I'm like, that's just rude.
Yeah.
Don't say that. Use a different word. Be a little bit more inventive. Come up with something else that isn't so derogatory. I don't deserve that. And you're smarter than that. Most of the time, you're smarter than that. Come up with a better statement than calling, because guess what? It's not a bad thing to be gay.
No,
I actually
exactly.
quite like it.
Yeah, I would not go back.
Right?
No.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly. So I right now it's just wearing my pride shirt. I go to the grocery store, I put on my pride J's cap, go to the grocery store, or I'm just unapologetically who I am. But the other side of that is I have honestly had so many people come up to me and say, "Thank you for living authentically. Thank you for showing us who you are. I have a grandchild who's just come out, or I have a child who's transitioning. Could
mm,
we sit down and talk for a few minutes? Could you just sort of give me some ideas of how I can frame things so that I can ask them questions to make sure that I'm meeting them where they are and helping them meet their needs?" And the people that I talk to that just want to make sure that they're doing the right thing for their loved
mm,
ones and showing them appropriate support, I'm encouraged by that. I am
yeah,
so encouraged by that. And if I sort of hid behind, my who I am and really wasn't out and proud and very, I'm very out and proud on social media everywhere. I make no apologies for who I am. That's how you and I connected, is because
yeah,
I'm out and proud on social media. I worry about the people who then wouldn't have someone to have coffee with and ask those questions of, how do I
yeah,
make sure that I say it right? My grandchild has told me they're non-binary. How do I make that transition in my language? Is it okay if I ask them questions? Did they ask me that because I've made them feel safe, because I
yeah.
have not been hiding who I am?
Hmm. Yeah, and especially during these times right now,
Oh,
we do
yes,
have to be there for our community and for others so much more.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So many queer people still believe that parenthood isn't possible for them. What are the biggest myths or fears you'd like to break for those dreaming of building a family?
I think one of the first and biggest is the one I alluded to before, that it isn't possible. It is possible. And one of the beautiful things about our community is how creative many people and families get to be able to be the parents they are. There's a beautiful couple that I know who share and co parent with another couple because one happens to be a couple where they both have phalluses. The other couple is a couple that both have uteruses. And so parent from each, they decided together to create a family. That's brilliant that
Yeah.
we have that opportunity and that those children get to see the dynamics of two families and how they come together and how these people wanted them so much that they made these decisions together to create their family. It doesn't have to be expensive. That's a huge fear. I don't get me wrong. There are a lot of costs associated with many different ways of creating families in our
Mhm.
community, but it doesn't have to be expensive. If you
There's
have
lots of
it,
options.
well, that's it. There are lots of options. If you have a uterus, is it possible to find a known donor? Not always easy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to find a known donor that you know.
Mhm.
There are different organizations and communities where you can find a known donor that's well vetted and has had the medical history and everything done, but it isn't necessarily coming out of pocket for you. You do at-home insemination. There's foster to adopt
Yeah.
and there's so many children who would really truly benefit from being in a home with parents who just want to be parents to that child, and the child has gifted them with their life to give them the privilege of being that child's parents. So there are lots and lots of options. It and most of it can be done, again, kind of like that coming out I talked about earlier and facing, do it in chunks. Set this amount of money aside, do this part if you're doing one of the processes that costs more money, and then set more money aside and do that in chunks. I think my biggest heartbreak is knowing that there are parts of the world where it's still illegal, and these are places that I would typically see as being fairly progressive. Like, I don't
Yeah.
look at Italy and think, oh, well, they're behind the times on things. We look at Europe, for the most part, go, okay, well, that's where most of us hope to be moving in terms of progress and things like that.
Mm.
And then I hear stories about parental rights being taken away,
Yeah.
or it just being outright illegal for queer people
Mhm.
to have babies. And I'm deeply saddened by that. And I wish there was a way that I could help more with that.
When we went through the process, our process was that we wanted to be a foster family first.
Mhm.
There was a couple actually that when we went to reunions that they were talking about how the process would be, starting with fostering to adoption. And there was this couple from Spain that at the time were not allowed to adopt. So they moved to Canada and then they were able to have their own children. Yeah, there's lots of options. And if you really want to, there's lots of options that can make it possible for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There are, but it's, again, that's why you do your podcast, why I do my
Yeah.
podcast. It's so that people can find community to find some of the answers that they need to have, right?
Yeah. You often remind others that we are the best authors of our own autobiography. Did I say that right? Oh, no. Autobiography. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to anglicize it, we usually say biography, not biography, but I know what you
Biography.
meant.
Yeah, but I want to say it
Yeah.
right. Okay,
Yeah. No, autobiography. Yeah.
autobiography. Okay,
Mhm.
let me read that again.
Sure.
Okay. You often remind others that we are the best authors of our own autobiography. Good.
Mhm.
What's the biggest lesson your story has taught you about self-respect and living authentically?
Don't apologize. I don't mean to be rude or disrespectful. I mean, if someone doesn't love, appreciate, or respect you for who you are, then that's a them problem. It
Mm,
isn't for you to make them feel better about who you love, marry, procreate with, etc. My grown children can see that I'm happier now, and that works for them. that helps them wrap their mind around who I am.
Mm.
When I can see that they're comfortable with who I am and how I'm living, then that makes me feel more comfortable. But it is truly, it's not about anyone else. If we're living our lives to make other people happy, then there's going to be a point of crash and burn, like I had at 39 when I pulled over on the side of the road and had a panic attack that my sons were going to private school and I couldn't cope anymore. And so that was my crash and burn. And I had to figure out how to regroup and reformulate my life so that I could get up in the morning and look in the mirror and be proud of who I was seeing, because I want my children to grow up and look in the mirror and be proud of who they see. And if they don't see me living authentically, they don't see me being happy, then what message am I telling them? That it's okay to be authentic and live happily until you get to such an age where you've settled for somebody and now it's about everybody else. So yeah, don't apologize. You are who you are, and that's okay, because you're supposed to be who you are, and everyone else is supposed to be who they are. And if they don't like it, well, maybe it's time for them to reframe their own vision of themselves.
So true. What you just said. And I had a hard time going through my life and accepting and looking at myself and being happy with who I was. And when we had our son, that was a breakthrough for me to say, okay, I want my son to be happy with himself and look at himself in the mirror and know that he's worthy of anything he wants, and he is. So right away I thought, well, how am I going to teach him that if I don't give that to myself? That is like one of the biggest gift that my son gave me and that I'm giving him. But I had to give it to myself first and learn to do that to little Steph, which is like, it's so amazing. So like a lot of people tell us, oh, he's so lucky he's got you guys, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. We're so lucky we have each other,
Right.
for that.
And that's it. They teach us so much
Mm.
that if we didn't have them in our lives, however they come into our lives, then there are so many lessons that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn. They are just such a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it's my life's work to help people have the families they dream about.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's amazing. Your website will be on the bio, so is your podcast.
Thank you.
And we'll be following you. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
It was an honor. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Sam. This conversation teaches us that self-love isn't about perfection. It's about listening to your heart, living without shame, and celebrate who you are with pride. Just like Sam, the world needs your story. It has the power to change lives, and your voice matters. I'm always looking for inspiring guests for the podcast. And I'd love to have you or someone you know share your journey with pride. Please reach out and send me an email today. It is already time to say au revoir just for now. So please join me next Wednesday for another episode of the Together Moving Forward podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode about how to love and respect yourself. If you found this episode useful, share it with a friend or someone you know in our 2S LGBTQI+ community so you can help them embrace self-love. It might seem like a small gesture, but it truly makes a huge difference. Wherever you are from in the world, we are all connected. Remember, solidarity beats hate. The more we unite, the stronger we become. Because at the end of the day, we are all equally human, and we all deserve the same rights. One last thing before I go, put your hand on your heart and repeat after me. Yes, you and me together. I am surrounded by people who appreciate me for who I am. Yes, I am surrounded by people who appreciate me for who I truly am. From shame, guilt, silence, and rejection to pride, freedom, healing, and love, together moving forward. Thank you so much for being here with me today and for sharing this journey of growth and love. I truly appreciate you. See you next week. Ciao. Subscribe now and share to uplift, empower, and make a real difference in our community.